Good evening, everybody, and welcome to this, the fourth and sadly the last of our, what I'm calling musical theatre masterclasses. We've talked over the last month with some amazing people, and I've got two amazing people to talk to you this evening. If you recall, in our first session, we talked pretty much about the golden age of musical theatre from about 1928, the show Showboat, through to roughly about 1960, when Camelot opened. And then we talked in the second week about how musical theatre moved away, or rather pop music moved away from musical theatre, and there was a kind of not quite sure where musical theatre was going, until the arrival of two people, Andrew Lloyd Webber with his breakout show, Jesus Christ Superstar, who went on, of course, to write some of the most amazing shows of the 20th and 21st centuries, including Phantom of the Opera and Cats and so on, and Stephen Schwartz, who started with another Jesus sort of rock musical called Godspell, and then wrote, amongst other shows, the extraordinary Wicked, which has become such a phenomenon. And we talked, of course, last week with Kerry Ellis, who's played Elphaba in Wicked, and also Toby Coles, who plays the trumpet in the pit band of Wicked. And I think you will agree you got some amazing input from those people. I'd like, as ever, to thank my producers for Jake and Glenn, who are producing this evening. I'd like to welcome our partners from all over Europe who are joining EYT for these sessions. It's great to have you here by the miracles of modern Zoom. And I'd also like to remind you, or perhaps slightly to remind your parents, that we're doing these to try and raise money for Acting for Others. The theatre industry throughout the world is in dire straits, as I'm sure you all know. Nobody can work. The theatres can't be open at the moment. And the theatre industry, which is phenomenally generous in giving to other good causes, performers and musicians donate their time and all the techies for so many good causes. And for once, we're asking for your help for the actual industry. And I'm told there is a donate button. If you or your parents can donate something to Acting for Others, we would be phenomenally grateful. And my two guests this evening have actually done an amazing amount of work. Harriet Thorpe. Harriet, do come into the room. Harriet has done some extraordinary, hello darling, as you will see the sign behind her, the Show Must Go On, which is the sort of umbrella organization for trying to keep us all together. And if you look carefully at that, you will see it's got a letter from each of the musicals currently in London. So if you know your West End musicals, you will be able to work out which show goes with which letter. Some of us are sad enough to do that. And Harriet Thorpe has had the most extraordinary career. For those of you who are slightly older, and if you haven't heard of this, go back and get it on YouTube, because it's the most fabulous show. Harriet first came to prominence in a show called The British Empire, which started life looking as a slightly ordinary sort of sitcom, and became more and more bizarre as the series went on, didn't it, Harriet? And you played this incredibly insane receptionist in this incredibly insane leisure centre who kept your children in a drawer in the desk, didn't you? That was
I think
the thing.
It wasn't just that I kept them in the desk. She lived in reception, and the children, the drawers were the children's beds and the cupboards. So it seemed to make sense. And when now we have Bring Your Children to Work Day, everything's fallen into place.
All done. And then, of course, you went on to play Fleur in Ab Fab, which was just the most amazing hit. But also, of course, you've done some amazing work in the West End, starring Cabaret. You played Madame Thénardier, a bit like Rosie Ash, who we talked to a couple of weeks ago in Les Miserables. You've also played Madame Morrible in Wicked, Mrs. Lovett in Sweeney Todd at Mamma Mia. And I saw you most recently, just over a year ago, God, it seems much longer, when you played absolutely brilliantly in Mame at the Hope Mill up in Manchester, which was just a wonderful production. And my other guest this evening, Janie, do come into the room, darling. She'll come into the room, I hope. I hope she'll come into the room. There she is. Well,
Sorry.
there she, no, it's all right. Hello, darling. You wouldn't believe she's just done a live streamed piece of theatre, would you?
No,
Janie's just done.
My camera broke on the reverse. Oh. I see you, and then I turn you round.
But anyway, you're with us. And Janie has had, again, an extraordinary career, seasons at the RSC and the National Theatre, working with some of our most brilliant playwrights, Alan Ayckbourn, and famously you did Pinter at the Pinter on Pinter at the Criterion, which was amazing. Comic Potential, for which I think you won every award that it was possible to win. And recently the Terence Rattigan play actually on screen, and also a phenomenal performance as Phyllis in Follies. The other major composer, along with Andrew Lloyd Webber of the late 20th and 21st century, is of course Stephen Sondheim. And Stephen Sondheim has written some absolutely extraordinary shows, but perhaps the most beautiful, perhaps the most resonant of them is Follies. And the National Theatre in London did an exquisite production of Follies. It's a difficult show to get right. And Janie played Phyllis in Follies. I don't know, is it available on DVD or something, Janie? Because if you haven't had a chance to see it, it's just phenomenal.
There is an NT live version, but I don't know if you can just get it like that. No. I think you can get bits of it on YouTube.
Well, hunt for it, because it was wonderful. I sat there just melting all the way through, because I love the show and I loved your performance, and it was wonderful. Now, you will note that with Harriet and Janie, both of you have had careers that have gone across what is sometimes called straight theatre and musical theatre. And that was quite deliberate, because amongst many questions I want to talk to you about tonight is, can you both perhaps, oh, hello, she's left. We've upset her. I wonder if you could talk a little bit about what is similar in working in musical theatre as opposed to straight theatre, or perhaps we should say non-lyric theatre. I don't really like the term straight theatre, but and then what is different. So Harriet, maybe you go first. Talk a little bit about that.
For me, I started, I think I was at the National Theatre in my early 20s in the Richard Eyre, David Hare company. And I never ever thought, I'm an actress who sings, I'm not a singer. And I always play psychotic, crazy ladies. They're never normal. They're always barking mad. And I think that for me, it's never, whether I'm singing or acting or in a musical or in a straight play or on telly or on film, it's the same job to me. There are nuances, obviously, that are different, that you have a live audience sometimes and sometimes you don't. And sometimes if you go wrong, you can fix it. Whereas when you're on stage, you just keep going and talk a load of old rubbish until you get back on track, or somebody helps you out, which we do all the time. But there's the instinct to perform and the instinct to express and communicate is built into the character. So whether you're singing or you're dancing her, because I trained at the Royal Ballet before my chest grew larger, because it was never going to get into a tutu. This is in my youth, when I was 16. You know, whether I'm singing, dancing, acting, I realized then the instinct to perform is everything. And creatively, whether you're painting or writing or playing an instrument, it's about expression. So I don't differentiate between one role or another. It doesn't matter if I'm doing comedy on telly or whatever. It's the same thing. And it's all about character and the text. And for me, that's everything.
Janie.
Yeah, well, I mean, I sort of agree with Harriet, except that I would say it feels quite different to me anyway, to get ready for, well, particularly a musical, because there's a sort of craziness backstage. Everybody's warming up and making lots of noises with their voices. You know, it's much quieter when you're with an acting company. So there's generally a lot more energy around a musical backstage before you go up, generally. And also then I And then also that thing of meeting the audience, that there's a real injection of energy for your performance from an audience, as opposed to when one's filming, you've got to sort of manifest. Well, you've got to be careful also, I think, of not taking all that kind of energy onto a screen. At least that's what I've seen, that, you know, over the years, that it seems to me that it is the same thing inside you, but there's something that happens with a live audience that can give you a kind of energy that if you do that on screen, it might be a bit too much. I don't know, maybe that's just my mistake, but I think
that's really interesting, and I think you're absolutely right. And I think it is different. You're absolutely right. But I was talking about the instinct to perform is the same, as opposed to. But you're absolutely right. The dynamic is different. And I think when I was filming Ab Fab and we had a live audience and we were filming it, then you're doing both at the same time, which is insane.
Yeah, that is insane.
Wow.
And there's also, isn't there? I mean, that is fascinating, and we'll perhaps explore that a little bit more. I mean, something that was very interesting, that both Rosie Ash and Liz Robertson said, which very much plays to what you were saying, Harriet, which is that they were taught, as I was, to read your lyrics of your song first before you even sing them, to read them, because you feel a bit of a twit, sort of saying, you know, I could have danced all night. I could have danced all night. But she said, actually, it works, you know, and extraordinarily, because it is all one thing, whether you're singing or speaking.
Yeah, absolutely, and I agree. I think also when I remember when I was doing Madame Thénardier and I began to read the novel, what amazed me was that it said that she read romantic novels, which means she was literate. Now, this is a big comedy character who is fairly abusive to a child, which isn't funny. And yet all these layers, and again, when you're stepping into something that's been running it had only been running about 13 years, I think, when I did it, to know that she was literate and had dreams and ambitions and wanted to be a princess and be loved and have a wonderful husband, not the grotty little inn that she worked in. Those things give you information and creativity. And again, you know, she's funny, but being harsh and brutal to a child isn't funny. So I thought to myself, within the text, what is this about? And I decided for myself, whenever she saw you know, that little girl, it reminded her, Eponine, sorry, it reminded her of herself, and she couldn't bear to look at it because her dreams were about something else. Now, that's something I made up for myself. Nobody had to tell me that. But again, it's what is in the text and your imagination and your research that you do for the different characters that you play give you that extra level to decide the nuances that you have with something that is sung. You don't have to show it, but knowing it, again, gives you a foundation to perform on.
And probably hardly anybody in the audience would ever get that, but that energizes you and gives you your say. That's fascinating. Janie, how do you research character? That's fascinating.
Well, I was just listening to what Harriet said, and I just thought I learned the hard way about research. You know, I used to sort of just go on instinct, really. And I think that was why I couldn't understand why I couldn't go from musicals to acting. And I think it was learning that you had to take it all quite seriously and look at the research. But the way I learned was by some amazing, you know, gift of fate. I was asked to do Shadowlands with Charles Dance, and I'd imagine that because it's about C.S. Lewis, the theologian and writer, and how he didn't really fall in love until he was about 60, and he fell in love with a divorcee who came from America. And I knew that much, and I imagined that he fell in love with her because she was amazingly sexy and beautiful. And so I started to say all the lines, like, you know, really, so like that, like an awful B movie. Anyway, luckily for me, somebody in the cast, I said to him after the first run, was it all right? He said, it's like some awful B movie. And I said, oh God. And he said, you know, I don't know what you're doing. You're sort of looking at him like, I don't know, you're some B movie actress. And I thought, oh God, this is awful. So I came home and I was up pacing the floor 3 o'clock in the morning. And I suddenly thought, who was the real woman? Her name was Joy Gresham, also a writer, also a theologian. Well, I looked at her and she had tight hair, pulled back, eyebrows that sort of went like this, amazing kind of glasses. And I read about her and she had this great big voice. She was a tiny woman, but she used to walk into a room and shout at everybody. And they didn't really like her at Oxford University very much. So, it was wonderful. I was laughing to myself thinking, God, I so got this wrong. So I went in the next day, put on these glasses and shouted the first scene, and everybody fell about laughing and said, that's it. So it wasn't as sexy, but it was much more fun. And it was a lovely thing to, it was a torture in the night, thinking, what am I going to do? I'm like a B actress, B movie actress. But that was the torture of making a mistake led me to find out, as Harriet said.
Yeah, but isn't that interesting? Yeah. Don't be afraid to junk that and say, well, that didn't work, I'll try something else. I mean, that's part of building a character, isn't it?
Yeah, but what I'm saying is that I didn't really, it wasn't automatic for me to go and do research and find out who, I hadn't been to drama school, so I didn't know that you should do that. I just sort of found out the bad way, the hard way. But I'm very glad I found it out. I'm very glad I suffered and had that night pacing the floor, because it made me realize, there's another way to go at this. And what's the truth of the matter? What is the truth of it? So yeah.
It's finding that little key to every character that you play. There's always some little thing that sets that spark a light in you, whether it's a little bit of costume, you think, I've got a fan, or something that feeds your creativity. And it's exactly what you said. It's so moving to hear that, Janie. It's real, and I totally identify. It is, though. Yeah,
it's very, very. And Beryl Reid famously always used to start with her shoes, and she would literally work up from her shoes. It was her shoes that gave her the character. So it's guys, when your teachers say to you, when Lynn and all the others say to you, do your research, read the play that you're doing a bit from, read around it, find out about the character, if it's a historic character, or even if it's not, there will be stuff there. So research is really.
But also, can I add to that?
Yes, please do. What you're here for.
Another kind of, finding it out on the job. I was at the Globe and I was playing the Countess of Roussillon in All's Well That Ends Well at Shakespeare's Globe. So there wasn't really that much about her. I had a few good scenes. I thought it was good, but I had to basically, because you can't go and research who was the Countess of Roussillon because it's 400 years ago. There's probably no real accounts of her. So you imagine, and so imagining that person's life and doing a backstory, which probably Harriet's done already as well, but I didn't know about doing a backstory then. And doing a backstory, in other words, creating the backstory for the character, I decided that my first child had not lasted. And so they were buried in the garden. And so it just gave me much more understanding of why this child I had mattered so much more. But nobody else, as Harriet says, nobody else knew that.
No.
I made that bit up. And there was a lovely moment that only I knew about, where I would just look over and remember.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
So beautiful. And I remember doing the same thing when I was playing another queen in Cymbeline at Regent's Park. Again, she was murdering her king, but she was doing it because she was trying to move her son up the ladder, and that we would die for our children. Our children mean everything to us. I thought I knew love, and then I had my children, and then I really did. And it's that thing. And that's what, the fact that she's an evil woman poisoning her king, but she's doing it because she loves her son. And again, the same thing with Mrs. Lovett. Why is it that Mrs. Lovett allows somebody to cut up people and bake them in her pies? And again, for me, it was love, because the story is that Sweeney left. She was always in love with him. And I believe she prayed to her God and said, please bring him back. And then one day, miraculously, he materialized, which gave her confirmation and affirmation that anything happened, it was the right thing, because God had brought Sweeney back to her. So when he began cutting up people and putting them in her pies, that was validation. Because otherwise, how do you find that? How is it okay? Even if you love somebody, they're killing people.
Yeah.
You're covering. So for me, I decided it was love. And it was a love and a belief. I don't, as you said, you don't play it, but that's the feeling and the that all she needed to allow it.
And this is fascinating, girls, because you've used examples from Shakespeare, you've used contemporary, you've used musical theatre, and it's all the same. It's all the same.
That's what
so
for me.
An old actress who, I think it was Peggy Ashcroft, but I'm not totally sure, who said the 3 I's: information, inspiration, and intelligence. No, sorry, imagination, inspiration, and intelligence.
Nice.
Excellent. Thank you.
Stanislavski always talked about the magic if, didn't he? If this was true, then that would be true. So can we drill down a bit? Because the creative process, and I have to say, none of my guests have spoken quite as wonderfully as you have about the creative process. So really listen to these people, because this is golden stuff. It really is. But you talked about particularly the energy of a musical theatre, and I mean, we were saying before we came on air, I'm so desperate to get back into a theatre and just experience that moment when an overture starts or whatever. But so now, one of the big differences, of course, is you alluded to it, because it tend to be more people in a musical. There's more scenery than Switzerland. Hundreds of techies, hundreds of stuff, and all the rest of it. And of course, and because of that, they tend to play much bigger theatres. So what's it like to go out in a great barn like the Olivier and do a show there, as opposed to doing something at the Hope Mill? What's the difference between doing a big splashy sort of music?
Yeah, I think you have to be careful not to be overwhelmed by the space, because that would really spoil it for you and for everyone else. And like Harriet said, it is all the same, in that the inside of you has got to build into the character. You've got to find all the information and the inspiration, imagination that goes inside you wherever you're going. But there is something about the Olivier that you have to sort of decide you're going to go out there and own.
It's a bit of a bugger of a space to animate, isn't it? I mean,
I love it. I've done the Ollie loads, and I just adore it. For me, I don't mind if it's a tiny studio theatre or it's to me, I'm home, and I don't care. And your performance and your dynamic, because when I saw Janie last year, it was a small theatre, but it's brilliant. And then I've seen her in the Ollie, so it doesn't make any difference. Her brilliance, talent, ability, character, everything comes across, and you do play instinctively. You evolve to the space that you're in, I think.
Yeah.
And does that take time? Because the difference between what the students are doing, probably they only do even performances, perhaps 3 or 4 times, whereas you might play in a musical for a year. I don't know how long you did Madame Thénardier, but
only a year.
A year, yeah.
But I think that you learn because people say, I can't hear a word you're saying. So, and there's a difference also in musical theatre and theatre is often you don't get mics in theatres. When I did stuff in the Olivier, we never had mics when we were doing acting, but then you have mics when you're doing, but then recently, when I first worked at Regent's Park, there weren't mics, and now you're mic'd even for plays. So it's all changing. And so you learn to play it because people go, can't hear you, didn't see that. So I think that's always helpful. Oh, I love.
Yeah, I mean, actually, the technical thing. Maybe talk us a little. I just before second lockdown, I got invited to the dress rehearsal of 6, and that's only got 6 people in it, the 6 wives, 1 set, and a smallish band. And because it was the dress rehearsal, I was sat in the stalls, and there were 14, count them, 14 production desks with computers. And I just thought, and these shows have become, and that's a small musical, and these things have become absolute beasts. And so a couple of things, how do you deal with the tech? And I mean by that, the general tech, and how do you deal with the incredibly long process of teching a musical. I mean, how do you and perhaps explain what that is for those who don't know? Either of you, just explain what a tech is.
So the technical is when you make sure, well, the technical people are in the audience, like you say, they sit out there with their headphones on like you, and they are talking to each other through, they're talking to each other through sort of walkie-talkie type microphones, and we can't hear them. You do the show on stage and they sort out lighting and sound and balance and costume and all the bits that you shouldn't be thinking about. Sometimes it is awful if you don't have all those people and you have to be in charge of it as well. So it's really nice if you're in a big production where you've got all those people looking after that for you. But it's a really nice time. Do you find, Harriet, because it's slow sometimes, they stop, they want to go back for the lighting or the back for the sound or whatever it is, or the orchestra. And so you have another go at things and you can sort of refine the performance in little tiny bits and go off in the corner of the wings and have chats to your colleagues about, should we try this, should we try that? And it's just a lovely sort of secret time when
the stage manager has said for the 900th time, stop.
And really, it's planning all the things that you do in the studio, in the rehearsal room. You don't have the real set, you don't have the real doors. So the technical is getting all the technical side of it, the reality of opening a door. Does it stick? Does it shut properly? Does that light come up? Are you still in the darkness? You know, it's getting all the technical things in place, which is also your entrances, your exits, the props that you were using in the studio, in your rehearsal room, are not the same as the ones on stage. So suddenly everything that you kind of, and it's nothing to do often with the performances, except as you so rightly said, there's little moments you have together going, I'm going to try this or let me try that. But it's actually often frustratingly sometimes you think, but I'm giving my performance, I'm giving this wonderful moment. They go, no, okay, stop there, put the lights up. You think, oh, damn it, it was never better. And it's sometimes it's wonderful and other times it's deeply frustrating, because when you're giving of your greatness and nobody cares, they're looking at the lighting or the door didn't shut.
Nobody cares. Nobody cares.
No, dear.
No, nobody cares. Okay, that's terrifically helpful. And so whilst we're on some sort of quite practical stuff, give us your golden rules. These young people are in youth theatre. Some of them will go on to do all sorts of things. Some of them will go into the theatre, perhaps. That would be nice. If you, looking back on your phenomenal careers, both of you, is there anything that you wish somebody had told you? And if so, tell it to them. And what would be your golden rules for how you behave in the profession?
Harriet, you go first.
Okay, darling. I think that the things that I think are, this isn't a race. There is no winning post. We're in it for the long haul. That this job gives you life skills of communication, that you can choose how you feel. We don't always want to get into white lycra, as I've done for Mamma Mia, and a platform boot 8 times a week, but I can, because at that moment, I can do my job. So even if I'm feeling miserable, I can always, as they call it, and as we call it in this world, Dr. Theatre, we can choose to be okay. I think to know that you don't have to be best, be first, be chosen, to know that you are enough. And it's always important to not be defined by other people who may be not nice to you or difficult, or you don't get the applause that you think you should have. Oh my God, they didn't laugh there. That means I'm no good. No, it doesn't mean that. So you have to learn to value what you do, to not be afraid, and to know you don't have to be, as I said, this isn't first past the post. There's no winning. It's a journey. This is a marathon. It's not a race. And that goes for, I think, everything in general. But we have communication skills that we're so lucky to have, because we can choose to be okay when other people can't. And we have that choice. And that's a key to freedom, to know you can always communicate and know that you are enough. We don't have to be the best. We just have to do our best.
Harriet, you don't want to come and preach for me one Sunday at the Actors Church, do you? Because I think that was pretty much what I try and say week by week. Wow.
Okay, dear, not a problem.
You heard it here first, guys. Janie, follow that.
I mean, I don't want to follow that, because that was just the best things I've ever heard said. Could you write it down, please?
Yes, darling.
so good.
Don't worry,
Thank
it's all
you.
being recorded. It's all being recorded.
Oh,
So-
I'd love to see this.
Yeah, no, you will. We will
What
send
Harriet just said was just so beautiful,
Stunning,
and so
stunning.
reassuring. And I
That
think
is
I would
beautiful.
only
But well, maybe you could give us
endorse-
then, Janie, your sort of golden rules. You know, what 5 things that anyone, whether they're doing amateur theatre, professional theatre, musical theatre, golden rules. What do you do? What do you don't do?
Okay, warm up. That's one of my rules. Warm up. So a bit of, you know, pliés, and if you do ballet, a bit of ballet. If you do anything else, just stretch and get warm. You know, tone up. Warm up the voice. Ah, so nice to do all that. I miss it. And that's a really good way to start before you get into the rehearsal. You know, you're absolutely ready as an instrument to do whatever's required of you. I suppose, yeah, do your research like you were saying, Harriet, and be nice to everybody. I mean, I think, you know, everyone's under pressure, even the producer who, you know, we so often think the producer's on the other side of things. The producer is often out of the team, but they are the reason that everything's actually happening. So I'm only saying this because I'm producing something at the moment, and it's so hard. It's so hard, and it's so tiring and upsetting and all that. So it's quite nice to realize that the producer, even if they do have loads of money, not in my case, but in the other people's case, you know, they are actually working incredibly hard to give us this opportunity to act and sing and tell a story the way we want. But anyway, yes, and be nice to everybody. I think everybody needs looking after, and have a chat every day. And I think one of the biggest things I've missed in lockdown is that kind of camaraderie that we have when we're working together. It's so lovely. There's
Yes.
no people like show people. No
it's
people.
true. And I just to let people know that Janie's working on a climate change festival to raise awareness of climate change, and it's a really good thing. It was all going to be live, now it's all going to be online because of so look it up. It's all there. I've looked it up today, so you can find it online. And how do you protect a lot of what you said about being a marathon? It's so important, and in a long career, how do you protect your instrument? I don't just mean your voice, I mean your singing voice, your body, which is your instrument. And can I ask you both, if you wish to share, how you're coping with not working? Because we're all, well, you all can't work, and it's awful.
So when I'm not working, I've tried to do some yoga every day and a bit of singing, but I'm finding it quite difficult to keep the discipline, the self-discipline alive. Yeah. I have to admit, you know, that I need a kick up the arse at the moment to keep singing. Sorry, children, but, you know, and actually as soon as somebody says, oh, would you sing at this or would you sing at that? I'm back, you know, rehearsing and warming up every morning again.
I'm finding it really difficult, because I sing every week in church, and of course I haven't sung for a year. And something came on the radio that I sing, you know, I love singing along, and I thought, I haven't got any voice, it's gone. And I'm like really panicking because I haven't used the instrument. Harriet, any other thoughts?
I think the most important thing is to keep being creative. And again, we instinctively have all that all the time. And what we have today, what we didn't have in the past, is social media, is Zoom, are all these wonderful things. And like you said, Janie, you're going to produce something online. We have the ability to keep being creative, not in the way that we knew. I, like you, want to be back having the most precious moments are laughing in the wings and chatting while the show's happening. To me, at nighttime, musicals, they're my nighttime family. What dramas are happening, who's eaten what sandwich from whatever cafe, all those minutiae nonsense stuff that gives us our nighttime families. I want that. And I want to be back, chatting and stuff and doing the shows.
And I want to go to Joe Allen's again too.
Yes, darling, absolutely. But we can't always. So again, it's what else can I do that's going to fulfill me today? I don't have to be defined by not doing something. What am I going to do? And we have this choice. And it's hard because you think, I want somebody to go, do this role, do this, come here, do the show. And sometimes I think, no, I'm going to do my own. So yes, I am on TikTok. Yes, the demographic is 15 to 17 and I am 63, but we'll let that go, dear. I am on TikTok. That's all I can say, because I'm there 1 minute and it's a laugh. I don't care whether one person sees it or nobody does. I want to keep doing things because that's who we are. And it doesn't have to be the same thing. We can change. Do you remember, and I'm talking to the more mature people, when you were younger, that your grandparents might have said, I don't know how to work a CD. I can't work the video. We can't be those people. We have to keep moving forward and evolving. What's next?
I remember getting so cross with my parents that they couldn't program the video, and I was like, oh, for God's sake, it's perfectly easy. And now I'm sort of thinking, oh God, I've got to do Zoom. I can't do Zoom. Of course you can do Zoom.
You
Stop
can.
being pathetic.
Exactly.
You know,
And that's what we have.
Now,
and Janie's doing it, obviously. So
and this amazing climate change thing. And I'm racking my brains, Harriet, because you said you always play mad. And I'm trying to think, oh, come on, there must be some character that you played that you weren't mad. And
no, darling.
I am struggling. Although her ladyship in The Dresser, you weren't completely mad in that.
She was staying with a husband who was horrendous, had a very empty life. Yes. And was a mature actress, playing much younger characters. I don't think her life was fulfilling. I think it was fairly difficult.
Okay, we've got some questions. I've got a written one first, which is it's a very simple question, but it's been asked, so I'm going to share it with you. How do you learn your lines? How do you memorize your scripts?
Over and over and over again. And also about, you can think about what somebody's thinking. What are the thoughts that connect? It's learning the thoughts that helps learning the as well.
I think you're so right. And I think I'm dyslexic, so looking at lines doesn't help me, and it is repetition, but also what's the story I'm saying? What's part of the story? So I can only say, did you open that door? Did you? Because the person's saying, who's there? Or so I have to answer that. It's part of the storytelling. So you learn it by the story that you're sharing on stage, or the thought sort of unraveling. So that's how I learn it. To look at it doesn't help. I highlight it, obviously, but and all of that. I have to do it to learn it. It has to be in my body to remember it. It's like a dance step. You remember it because it's all connected physically, emotionally, and vocally. That's how I learn, because I'm dyslexic. So it's different for everyone. There's no one way to do anything, actually. Everybody's different.
Fascinating. I remember doing a show once and I just had a block with a line, and I just kept going. Every rehearsal, I would lose this one line. And in the end, I just thought, right, I'm going to put in a move, because the move will give me the line.
Yeah.
Because then I won't be thinking about the line. I'll be thinking about the move, and then boom, it'll be fine. Okay.
Exactly.
We've got.
Did it work?
Yeah, well, up to a point. Ish.
But often, it's actually so true that, Simon, because often when you're dancing and you get the choreography, the words come quite quickly if you're singing and dancing choreography. Whereas if you've got a big monologue, you do have to depend on your thought patterns whilst you're singing.
And of course, also in the music, the music does help you, of course, because it rhymes and because it's there.
Yeah.
And also, let's not put too fine a point at it. There's been many a conductor who's mouthed the line at an actor before now.
Oh God, that's terrifying.
I do remember, this will resonate with you, Janie, because when Cameron's original production of Follies at the Shaftesbury, the role of Phyllis was played by Diana Rigg, who sadly left us last year. We're doing her memorial later this year, bless her. Though not obviously in the first half of the year, because you know what. But I saw that production 8 times. I'm a little bit of a Follies obsessive, I am that sad. I really am that sad. And at one performance, Diana Rigg, who famously had a lot of back problems, and she was playing Phyllis, and in the mirror number, she actually fell. And I have to tell you, and I'd seen it, so I knew it was a mistake because I'd seen the show so many times. And I swear to God, she did not break character. She did not break character, even though she fell over in the middle of a dance routine. And and at the end of the number, there was huge applause, as there always is at the end of the mirror number, because it's an amazing piece of work. And she just put a little for those of you who don't know, it's older actors are having a reunion, and they're ghosts of their younger selves to the play, and so the mirror is them looking at their older selves and their younger selves. So that's the MacGuffin. But and she just said, "Gee, I'm more out of practice than I thought," which of course got a huge laugh. But it's because she hadn't broken character at all. You know, and if you knew that, if you could make a major mistake. Well, it wasn't a mistake; it was an accident. But if you do that and stay in character, that's one hell of a piece of acting. You know,
when I was doing the dance number with the boys as Phyllis, I went over on my ankle one night and ended up on the floor.
No.
And continued to dance on the floor with my arms and
I bet
then
nobody knew.
Very sexy get up off the floor back into the number, and all the boys said to me afterwards, you know, look at you.
But you know, that number was terrifying because I saw you do that, and I mean what they were doing with you and the speed of that number and the lyric complexity of that number. Again, guys, look it up on Spotify. Hard. It's an extraordinary number. It's called The Ballad of Jessie and
Lucy and Jessie.
Lucy and Jessie.
And it took us, the first time we actually did it all the way through, at the end of the number, all of us, including the very fit boys, ended up sort of standing, you know, trying to get their breath back, panting and nearly being sick. We have to do this every day, otherwise we're never going to be able to do it.
No.
And we did.
You do get fit. It's what the people say about doing Strictly. You don't half get fit, you know.
Yeah.
I think there's something, you always get show fit. You think, oh, I'm never going to make it through. I can't do this number. And by the end of the run or by the end of the couple of weeks, you're show fit. Your body's used to it. And so you deliver because your body is acclimatized to it. It's amazing.
Yeah. I've got a question. Can I ask something? If we just go back to the way it was, you know, I've been doing all this sort of study on the climate and the carbon emissions that are heating up the world, and our children, these children here included, are going to inherit something awful if we don't lower the carbon emissions. So theatre, if you've got 1,000 people in a theatre, that's 1,000 people sometimes driving, taking trains, taking taxis, taking buses, all coming in, causing loads of emissions, watching the show, loads of lights, loads of sound, and then all going out again, more emissions. Is that okay?
I think the wonderful thing now is that we have cars that are electric that don't have emissions, and and again, trains and electricity and all of those things, and buses. Many of the buses are electric now; they're not diesel fueled. So I think those things are beginning to shift and change. And as we know, you know, it is changing.
And also, it's quite interesting that you know, a lot of the new lights now are LEDs. They're much less
exactly.
You know, but there's a big problem with batteries. However, we're not going to solve that one tonight, and I'm conscious that we've got people waiting to come and ask you questions. But it is important stuff, and it's your generation, guys, that are going to fix it. You know, because we're all, you know, too long in the tooth to
no. The word you want, darling, is mature. We're mature. Thank you. Yeah.
All right, now we've got our first question tonight is from Anna. And Anna, so come into the room. This always takes a few seconds for them to come into the room, guys. So, but here comes Anna, and I happen to know she's in Southampton, which is nice because that's my old hometown. So Anna, your question to Harriet and Janie.
Hi. So just before I go, I just want to also brag about my bag.
I've got one of those.
Good girl.
Lovely.
Prices is insane, but still it was worth it. So my question is more to everybody in the room, but also Harriet, in your career you have played one of my dream roles, which is Mrs. Lovett, and it did make me wonder, again to everyone in the room, what were your dream roles, or have you been lucky enough to actually perform them?
Oh, that's really interesting. It's really interesting. I think the most important thing is, yes, I've always had dream roles, and when I was at drama school I only wanted to work doing Shakespeare at the RSC, and I found myself doing sitcom on BBC One. So, you know, so you get what you want and not what you need. And it's lovely to have those dream roles, but I was never going to be Juliet. I was always going to be the nurse. So I think, you know, I may have wanted to waft around doing Chekhov and doing crying acting, but I've often done comedy, and actually that's given me my friends, my life. You have to, and this is what I said to my son and my daughter when they were little: you go where you're wanted, not where you want. Because if you have this ideal, if I do this, when I've got this, then I will be okay. If it doesn't happen, then you're nothing. We can't do that. So have the dream roles, aspire to them, practice them, all lovely. But my experience is I just say yes to everything. And my dream role is the one that I'm given, whatever it is. Whatever job I do, whether it's a tiny part or a lead, I love my job. I love my work. And I'm just grateful to do that job in the moment.
It's fascinating because when that question came up with Liz Robertson, she said, somebody asked, what's your favorite show? And she said, the one I'm in. And I thought that's
exactly.
such a great attitude.
Always.
Yeah,
Janie,
always.
Dream role for you?
I agree that, we love the one that we're in. I totally agree with that. But it is nice when you think, oh, I'd love to play, certain part, and then you get it. I remember thinking, it'll never happen, but I'd love to play Cleopatra. Suddenly I was asked to play it, the Globe.
Wow. It's a great role.
Fantastic.
Great role.
I played it, guys, I played it at the Hollywood Bowl.
It doesn't really get better than
and
that.
mic drop.
Yeah.
I know. It was, but I'm just saying that, that was like a dream come true. And I think it is nice to know what your dreams are, because when you get them, you can go, wow, this has actually happened, and appreciate it. But I do agree also that, if you're playing a part on the telly or playing a part in a film or whatever that part is, that you make the most of it. But I've had some parts on telly that haven't been very good, and that's been sometimes hard to really enjoy.
It's interesting. One of the things that's coming out of lockdown is, I don't know if you've seen this, guys, but there's the roles we'll never play, and there's people have been singing roles that they would never ever, usually because it's the opposite sex. Yeah. And I love that. I mean, I would kill to sing Little Priest in as Mrs. Lovett in Sweeney Todd, because I mean, partly because it has the greatest lyric in the whole of musical theatre, which is "Have some shepherd's pie peppered with actual shepherd on top," which has got to be the greatest lyric ever written. But also because as a priest to sing a song called "A Little Priest" would be just heaven. So maybe
Anna,
Harriet,
can
how
I
about
ask Anna?
you play Sweeney and I play Mrs. Lovett one day?
Okay, darling, we'll do it. We'll do it at the church. Anna, what's your favourite dream role? Do you have one, darling?
How long's a piece of string? There isn't one specific dream role. It's just loads of things that you desperately want to play. I mean, I love to play for completely different reasons. I love to play Amy in Company because she's got a patter song which I learned for a project. I love to play Dawn in Waitress. I love to play Mrs. Lovett, and they're all such completely different characters, but you just want a piece of everything.
Exactly, but that's great. That's great.
Lovely.
But the thing to
Anna.
know is that if you don't, it doesn't matter, because you'll get something else that will fulfill you, and you never know where that's coming from.
Absolutely.
Yes, well, I always say, and I can say this now because I actually know Trevor. I grew up thinking I was going to be Trevor Nunn, not that I was going to be Rector of the Course, but hey, you get what you need, not what you want.
I mean, in an ideal world, it will probably happen in about 5 years it will happen. I'll be capable of it in about 5 years. It's actually Christine.
Oh, that's the big thing.
Well, I'm working on it.
That's the big thing.
Good.
Fabulous.
I can
Thank
do
you.
it.
Thank you very much, Anna. So we're going to go next to Athena, thank you, Anna. We're going to go next to Athena, who's going to ask a question. But yes, I do think Sweeney Todd is a work of genius. I really do. I mean, it's just an amazing piece of theatre, Right, Athena, welcome, and lovely to see you. Thank you for joining us. Your question to Harriet and Janie.
So my question is, what is the difference between preparing for a classical play that has been played already by many other actors and a totally new play?
Oh, great question. Wow,
Yeah,
I wish I thought of that.
Great question.
Who wants to go first? Janie, go first this time.
I've done quite a lot of new plays, and what's really nice is that it's your creation. There's nobody going to compare it to anything else, which is the lovely thing about a new play. Sometimes a new play, you don't know the tempo of it because it hasn't been done before. So it's got that, it's a fresh experience, but that's the difficulty, that it hasn't been tried and tested. So you're trying to find out what's the rhythm, what is the feel, the speed of it. But writers usually write very clearly their rhythm, their tempo, their feel, their energy. You can feel it in the way they write. Pinter writes very clearly like he speaks, or like he spoke, quite like that. You know, there's a rhythm to the way people speak, which is how people speak. It's not like they speak, but you can feel the writer sometimes in the way they write, whether they're alive or dead, whether they've written a new play or an old play. So that's the difference, is finding out the voice of the writer, I suppose, finding out who is the voice of the writer. And also, if you do something that's been done a million times, to pretend that it's never been done and start from scratch as if it's just been written, which is actually what Dominic Cook said with Follies. He said, we're starting from the beginning, as if this has never been done before. And it was very helpful.
I think that's brilliant, and I totally agree with you. I think that I was doing a new play at the National Theatre called Great Britain, and we did that a few years ago. And what's exciting about a new play is it changes all the time. Writers put in different things, so you're always in a creative, collaborative state with something that's new. Again, for me, always, it's about doing, who is this character I'm playing? And if it's something, I think, Sondheim and also Shakespeare, I will never be better, ever, than those writers. They will always be better than me. So whether it's a contemporary piece or whether it's a piece that was written a long time ago, certain writers will always have you reaching and yearning to keep the creativity and match the quality of the text. And it's just such fun doing a new play because, as I said, you're part of that evolving. But doing an old play is also wonderful because, again, it is there because it is brilliant. It has proved itself. So you know those words that are uttered, that other people have uttered before you, is the most moving thing, whether it's a Greek tragedy from thousands of years, or hundreds of years ago. We still have a voice. Ever since our world began, we have needed a reflection of society to show us the world that we live in. And all the things, the themes of love and loss are always there, and humor have always been there for us. So I think whether it's a new piece or an old piece, for me, it has me fulfilled. And I think I don't really differentiate between them either, because I will, if it's Shakespeare, nothing could be better. And if it's a brand new piece, then nothing could be better, because I'm actually lucky enough to be involved in its creation.
Wow, thank you for that really great question, Athena. Next, we've got Leah. I'm really interested in that. Thank you, Athena.
Thank you, Athena.
I think what's fascinating is well, Julie Andrews famously said, of course, musicals are not written, they're rewritten. And so that constant with a new show changes. But also, I mean, I saw you being brilliant as Vera in Mame last year up in Manchester. Mm-hmm. Mame is a very big, splashy musical, normally done on a huge stage. And you did it on a pocket handkerchief size stage. So you must have had to rethink it. And yet it was the show, and yet it was a new version of the show. So it's interesting.
Yeah. Who's that? Who's there?
This is Leah. Leah, what's your question?
Yeah. My question is, when did you know that what you wanted to do was perform?
Oh, gosh.
Shall I go
Harriet.
this time? Yeah.
Yeah.
I knew, again, when you have an instinct, this is my experience, is an instinct to perform isn't something you choose. It's there within you. And my earliest memory was trying to make my younger sister laugh. And I would do all sorts of things to get her to laugh. And that feeling when she did, that excitement of getting some reaction was so fulfilling. For me, needing to perform is not normal. We should probably all be in a home, because I love to think that I'm there to communicate. And we're also there for the clapping and the curtsying and the costumes and the makeup and the lovely things. It's all such an enticing, wonderful experience to dress up as a little girl, to dress up and be someone else and do shows for my parents. It's not something I had a choice over. I was driven to do it. It was in me. Whether I started dancing and then I evolved and went to drama school later. It doesn't matter. That instinct to perform is there. We don't have a choice. It's like an illness, except it's better.
Well, I always say to people, if I'm asked for advice, if you can do anything else, if you could be fulfilled doing something else, fine. If you can't, do it, because if it's the only way it can make you happy. Janie, are you there, or are you having camera problems again?
No, I'm just looking at Harriet. I just turned around so that I could see Harriet.
Well, you should be able to click on the view thing and see it as a gallery.
I haven't got a reverse camera, so if I want to see you, I have to turn you around and look at the screen. I can't see.
There's no answer to that. There really isn't. But did you always want to perform, Janie?
Yes, from the moment I heard Gershwin's Rhapsody in Blue, and I didn't know what to do because it was so fantastic. And so my mum came in and found me crying and said, "Why don't you dance?" And so I started to dance, and that was a way of living through the music and expressing the music. And it's like Harriet was saying, it's a calling. It's like I just want to do this. It makes sense to me to do this, and it helps.
For me, I would say, I have this hugely privileged job of looking after the Actors Church, and I will say it's a vocation. It's something that you don't actually have a huge amount of choice in.
Yeah.
I mean, like I say, I really, really never wanted to be a vicar because I wanted to be Trevor Nunn. But
but there are ways to, as you've really illustrated for us, Simon. You wanted to be one thing, but you've become a vicar, and you have used being a vicar to become a performer as well. And I think that's a really...
People would have said I've misused being a vicar, but let's not go there.
Can I ask Leah, does Leah, do you feel like that, darling?
Yes, I mean, it's something I love to do it. And I couldn't picture myself doing anything else, so.
What do you love best?
I like dancing, acting, singing. I like everything.
Good.
I think what else is amazing about our group is that as a tribe of people in the arts, whatever part of it you're in, it's inclusive, supportive, accepting, and creative. And again, to me, that's those are the people I want to be with. We don't have issues with whoever anybody is. We're all together. Yeah, and that's why acting for others. Yeah, the show must go on. We're there for each other. And that's the most important thing.
Go on. Leah, thank you very much for your question. I'm going to squeeze one last question in. We're running out of time. But I'm going to squeeze one last question in. And this comes from Lara Lena, who's going to come into the room in just a moment. And here she is. Look at this. The wonder of modern stuff. Hiya.
Hi there.
Lara Lena,
hello.
Nice to see you. Welcome to, and what's your question for Harriet and Janie?
Thank you for this opportunity. And my question is, how did you first get interested in performing arts? And do you have any tips for young performers like me? I'm 8 years old. Thank you.
I think the first part of your question's been answered, but okay, tips for young performers like Lara Lena. Right, 20 seconds each of you. Tips for young performers. What a great question.
Yes. Okay. So I would say if you're young and you love it, keep loving it, keep doing it, and create things for other people to watch. It's very important when you're little to keep doing it and to make shows up, make stories up, put costumes on, get your neighbors around, get your friends around to watch you, tell them at 8 o'clock there's going to be a performance and put it on. And then see what happens.
We can do that now. My tips are watch other people and see what they do and see if there's something you think, oh, I think that's a good idea or that works, because we have our ideas in our heads, but it's also really interesting to look around and see what everybody else does and see how they evolve. And some things you might think, oh, I don't want to do that way, but I love that way. I'm going to try that too. So it's to keep an open mind and look around and watch everyone and everything and keep doing what you do.
And as Jay said, keep loving it.
Okay.
Thank you, Lara Lena. And
Bye,
Janie,
darling.
My darlings, thank you so much. You've given us so much. It's been an absolute privilege listening to you and sharing with you. I was thinking, all my guests over these past four weeks, when we come back, and we are going to come back, I thought we perhaps all of us, Rosie and Toby and Kerry and Liz and you and I, we should all get together and have a big meal and celebrate.
Yes,
That would be sublime. 100%.
Thank you so much. You've shared so much of yourselves. It's been very personal, and I'm very, very grateful for all that you've shared with us. And thank you all for listening. It's been my privilege to host these, and I hope that you will take away some of the amazing stuff that you've learned.
And thank you, Simon, for asking us, because it's such a pick-me-up to get together and talk about what
100%.
Yeah.
And to see you, Janie, and to see you, darling, it just
Gorgeous.
gives us back us. So thank you.
We will return. The show must go on.
Yes.
God bless.
Yes.
Good night.
The show must go on.
Yay!
Yay!
Yay! I've got a mask that says the show must go on.
I've got everything.
Yeah.
God bless now. Bye, everyone.
Bless.
Bye.
Lots of love. Thank you. Bye.